Hey guys, welcome back to Heart of the Hero, Tools for Successful Minds, where we like to talk about some strategies, tips, and ways and things that we've learned from our experience and our information gathering through our ventures as entrepreneurs and life coaches. And so we want to share some of that with you guys. And what are we talking about tonight, Greg?
I don't know how dead you are. This man is low energy. Let me wake you guys up. So today we are talking about maximum leverage. We're talking about how to leverage your own mind to gain insights into the world through learning and your ability to grow. So you might be coming into this video with the need, with the desire, with the goal to pick up some tips about, how to learn and how to grow faster. And all this stuff is useful. All this stuff is important. All this stuff is healthy. But the one thing you need to understand is if you watch this video from start to finish, I promise you that you will understand how to learn faster than you've ever been able to before and retain the information. Because sometimes there's a tendency that happens with some people who teach or some people who share information. And what it is that, especially when it comes to learning, right? And I'm a huge fan of learning. I like to consume information, stuff it in my head like a pit bull in a box, right? So for me, this is a special show. This is something that I can speak freely about. And if you're, someone who likes to learn and likes to stretch yourself, likes to grow, this will be beneficial to you. But the thing to remember is if you stick around, if you stay from the start to the finish, and you listen and you pay attention intently, you're going to know some practical tips, some practical tools that you can use immediately, today, tomorrow, in an hour, whenever it is that you want. You can pull these out of your toolkit and you can use them to teach yourself faster.
And it's people often don't look at learning or taking in information as a skill or a practicable thing that you can actually improve on. It's kind of like it's kind of like reading slow. People are like, well, I've always kind of been a slow reader. I'm like, well, no, you're a slow reader because you've not read a lot, and so you don't read very fast because your reading comprehension skills aren't very good, and that can be increased. And so it's like people don't often kind of look at learning as a skill that they can, and maybe you're out here actually looking for these skills, and you're at a great place because one thing that Greg and I have done a lot of is information seeking research, because we really for a long time were searching for understanding of human behavior and people and how they functioned. And, we would talk about it at length for hours, just trying to really pick apart some ways of thinking. It's amazing how complex, our brains are, and how many ways that you can actually improve upon the way that it takes in information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you pick up, if you start to kind of notice how your own mind works, how the brain works, and there's a lot of, tools and information online and stuff you can use, but ultimately there's a deeper level, right? Because everything has a meta thing, and I'm not going to get too complicated with this. I'll give you a concrete example because those are fun, right? So let's say that my hand is here, right? Or a bottle of milk, right? Like old fashioned, the glass bottles, right? And I'm holding it right now. Well, in my hand, you might say this is a concrete, real, true bottle of milk, right? And that's what it is. That's what it actually really is in the world. But there's a meta level, right? Which is the idea that is the bottle of milk, right? You've got the glass, you've got the milk, all these things, they're put together and they make up that bottle of milk. So the thing to understand is, once you understand the higher level abstraction, right? The thing that is not the thing itself, the concept, right? Once you understand what mathematics is, right? You can apply that in a bunch of different fields, right? So the thing that we're going to teach you today is what you can do specifically, right? How you can prime yourself to learn on a deeper level than most people are capable of doing. And I say that with full candor because learning is one of those things that you're going to do consistently, right? You're going to start doing it probably from the time that you're born, right? You have to learn to walk, you have to learn to speak. You don't maybe have to learn to cry, but you have to learn to do pretty much everything else, right? So it's something that you do as a lifelong pursuit. And let's say that we put your skill at learning, right, on a scale, because scales are fun, right? 1 to 10. What if you could take your skill at learning from a 1 or a 2 or a 5 or a 4, to a 10 or a 9, right? Or an 8 overnight, or a 12, right? What if you could raise that skill? It's just an efficiency thing. Because if you look at your life, let's say you're going to be around, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 more years, right? 100 more years. Well, how many new things do you have to learn? How many times will you walk into a conversation and someone's like, hey, have you heard this before? And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. Tell me more. What does this mean? How does it work? And you know what you're doing? You're learning. People think that they're only learning, right? They're only growing when they sit down with a book and they open it. No. You are learning every moment of every day you encounter something new, because you have to, because you don't understand it. So if you learn the tools, right? If you actually grow your own ability to learn quickly, to learn faster, you're going to start to change as a person very quickly. And I want to talk about some of the things that you might be feeling right now, right? Maybe there's some excitement there if you're an avid learner like myself, but more than that, you're going to have some stuff going on in your life right now. If you're in this video, if you're in this cast, in this show, and you're looking for the tip, right? The ideas, the techniques to pick up your own learning speed, right? Maybe you're doing it for school or for a professional thing, but there's a mindset there, right? And it's that you're sort of open to this. And I kind of want to talk about some of the things that might be associated with a person who right now is open to this experience, right? Because once you understand what it is that you're feeling, what it is that your experience might be, right? And these are basic things, I know, but let's say that you want to learn. Let's say that you want to learn some dates, right? Basic thing. If you want to learn some dates, well, it's easier to understand once you know what your motivation for doing that is, right? So I think it's important to talk about some of the life experiences or some of the ways a person might be thinking right now coming in.
Well, I think you could, especially if you're here actually looking for some skills, I would imagine, and make some assumptions about you that, you've noticed an issue. You've noticed a problem with your ability to take in information right now and your ability to learn at a good pace right now. And so that's kind of why you're out here searching for some tips, searching for some answers and some guidance and some different ways that could maybe help you out. I imagine you've probably gotten a little frustrated recently, maybe even a little discouraged because you have to, you've got something you got to get done. You got something that you have to focus on, and you're having trouble actually like getting the information, holding it in your brain, maybe whether you be studying or researching or, on a project, and it doesn't actually matter. Whatever you're doing, if you're not very good at, you don't have good study skills, good practical learning skills, you can get a little discouraged and frustrated at your results because you're not retaining information as well as you need to be to call on it, in any moment. It's not committed to that understanding level. It's still kind of just at a random facts in your head level, and you can't necessarily call on it on demand. And so that can be a little frustrating, especially when you've put in the work and you're in here trying hard, but you're having trouble retaining information. So I think we can come to a place of kind of frustration and discouragement where we want to kind of just like throw our hands up like, well, I mean, I don't know what to do. There's nothing I can really do about this because I'm reading the books. I'm doing, I'm given the time. I'm reading, I'm doing my study guides. Like I'm getting what I need to get done. But and sometimes that's not all it takes. Sometimes to get past the initial study phase or the initial information gathering, initial learning phase, you actually have to be able to increase your ability to retain that information. And that might seem kind of foreign as a foreign concept, but there are ways to prop creativity. We look at some of the great minds throughout history, and we look at like Edison, and I'm really mad that I'm really mad that I just quoted Edison. He was a scumbag, but he did have a great mind. Savage. Sorry about that. But it's like Einstein and Tesla and all these people that Da Vinci and anyway, all these people they had these kind of methods, these little extra tips like what's sensory deprivation chambers and meditation practices and talking about the imagination function of the brain, and doing affirmation naps and some of these like little things, to get their minds sharp, keep their minds working, proc this creativity, proc this insight, proc this understanding, fix this problem. And they would do this. They explored the subconscious mind, and they went through some of these practices to figure out ways, because they understood that the brain is a tool, the brain is a machine, and you are the operator. And you have the capability to find an answer to a problem. You have the capability to take in information. You have the capability to retain it into long-term memory. But we often kind of, we're not using great study habits. We think just reading words on paper over and over again is enough, and that'll give the information. And sometimes it is. I mean, if you have a type of brain and you're a type of person where you just read something once and you've got it in there, you're a lucky person. For anybody else out there that doesn't have that ability, it's important to learn ways to get your mind in a good state. And that's one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit, is getting into a good state when you're going into learning, and how that can affect you and the state that you're in, and how that can affect your ability to take in information and retain it well,
Well, and I'm gonna open this up now, because there's this idea of imprinting, right? And it's or encoding is actually what it's called. So in communication, right, there's a bunch of different ways that it happens. But when I say something to you, right, I'm sending the message, you're receiving the message. Well, that's a process, but there's also a process of translation, right? You have to understand what's being said so that you can respond to me, and we start the process all over again, right? You send, I receive. We're playing catch, right? You throw the ball, I throw the ball, you throw the ball, I throw the ball. And one of the things that I want to get to later, right? I know it's important though, is the way that you actually encode, the way that you actually learn, the way that you actually take in information. There's a lot more things than what you think that matter, right? Like your location, how you feel, what you're doing, what you're wearing. These things actually play a role in your learning process, but we'll get to that. More importantly, and this is something that is understandable right now, right? Quickly, right? I used to have very bad hand-eye coordination. We'll put it that way, right? It wasn't stellar. Well, something happened. I noticed something interesting, and I didn't really pay attention to it until I started to become aware of it. And kind of the more and more I looked at it, I was like, oh, this plays way more roles in my reality, in my life, than I thought, right? So here's what happened. Let's say a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. I don't actually know the exact date, but there was a time when I was just horrible with that stuff, right? And so what I did was I started taking practices. I started to play with ideas and read stuff and look at, the dexterity of the hand and just random stuff like that, because it's fun, right? So I ended up practicing. Yeah, it's fun. It's right. This is my stuff right here. So I ended up practicing juggling. Right now, I am by no means a good juggler, but you start, you start with a ball, you pick up another one, whatever. Well, I noticed, you're just tossing this back and forth, and there's a very small window of my own awareness of where the ball was at, right? So when I first started, and maybe you could identify with this if you're first starting, learning yourself, or you're trying to get better at it, or you feel like you're not that good at it right now, but you want to be, right? Well, when you start something, I'm starting this juggling thing, right? This throwing the balls around thing. I'm awful at it, right? I'm throwing and I'm missing one ball, right? It's going, just landing on the floor, right? You play catch with someone and you get hit in the face because you can't see it. You can't see where the ball is at. You're not able to track that yet. Your mind hasn't really gotten there yet. But you keep doing it, right? You keep trucking. You keep moving forward. You do it a little bit. You do it a little bit more. You pick up another ball. You maybe throw them around a little bit. You play catch. You do whatever it is. You throw the ball on the wall, and you just do these things over and over to go. And it doesn't have to be that, right? You can do it in a whole bunch of different ways. But you're practicing, right? You're growing. You're trying. And the more that you do this is what I noticed. People think, right? People think that your spatial awareness is just throwing a ball or kicking a rock or whatever, but it's not. You actually start to notice, you begin to notice the speed at which people are moving their arms, the speed at which people are moving their mouth, right? These things are actually they're using the same systems that you're using in your body, right? The same parts of the brain that are tracking objects moving. are tracking objects moving, right? So whether it's a ball or something flying at your head, like a bee or a beetle, you're still being more aware of it. So it opens up all these possibilities, all these new areas of experience, right? You before you wouldn't see a truck driving by, and then now you can read the logo because it looks like it's moving slow. So how does this relate to learning, right? How does this relate to you? Well, the point that I'm making, and this is really one you should drive home, stick it in your knapsack and take it with you. When you learn, right? When you learn how to learn more properly, faster, better, quicker, and in a deeper way that helps you to retain it, that crosses so many levels in your life, right? You'll start to notice that it's not just learning that's being affected, right? It's your communication, it's your relationships, it's how you interact with people. Well, why is that? How would your relationships be affected by learning? Well, you got to recognize every time you come across a new situation, your brain is trying to recognize a pattern, right? It's like, okay, they're saying this, they're doing this, therefore trying to grab a pattern, trying to give you the answer, trying to get to the end of the equation, right? Well, the more you practice understanding what the foundation of that is, that process, and you learn it, you start to feel almost like a superhuman, right? And I'm not saying that that's what this is, but it will make you better.
You know, that reminds me, because I remember when I started and started reading, especially, you know, more excessively outside of school sanction and, you know, fun. I started reading to direct myself and find and learn about the chosen field that I had chosen for myself. And it was tough at first because it seemed like I was having to reread a lot of stuff. I wouldn't remember things as well, and I ended up having to read a couple books a couple times because I just wasn't retaining the information as well as I could be. And I just remember how encouraging it felt for the first time when, like, you're in a conversation with somebody and something comes up and it's something you've read, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, you know, I was just reading in this book about this thing, and like you just spit out all this information. You start like really impressive, colorful explanation of what this book was talking about and or whatever, and it's just like, and you're like, oh, like, cool, like that's in there, like I'm actually getting stuff out of that. You know, I remember that feeling of being like excited because it's like, man, I actually see myself getting stronger here. You know, I see myself growing. I see myself building better practices. And, you know, and I think it's one of those areas that it's hard to kind of push through at first because it may not seem like you're getting anywhere. And I think that's kind of why we're doing this video, because, you know, we were kind of just doing our own thing when we started. You know, we were reading, pushing ourselves, grinding, you know, trying to get stuff done and just taking information everywhere we could. But then after we kind of developed good practices, then we started like actually, you know, discussing this a little bit more. And so, you know, what we hope to do here is give you a quick like snapshot of some of the things that we learned about how to study better, how to learn better, how to get your mind and body into a state that is going to most effectively absorb information. You know, people don't give a lot of credence to how their physiology is affecting their study habits, or their physiology is affecting their ability to retain information. But I'd say to people that think that, what do you think your brain is? You know, your brain is it's a physiological part of your body. You know, you're saying that your physiology doesn't have an effect on your physiology, and I don't quite understand that. You know, so there's some things that we're going to talk about, like specifically putting yourself into a good state. You know, we had talked about state change in reference to some other areas, and this will be a little different. And I know, Greg, you probably want to cover a couple things on your own, but I think I'm going to focus on that in this, because it's something that greatly gets overlooked and often overlooked. How your physical body can actually, because I remember there's a story. I remember when I was working at a manufacturing plant, and we were on this project. We were starting this thing called the quality circle. And, you know, it's basically this idea where we were going to make a project, fix a problem in the building, and that you could actually, you know, I don't know if I actually can licensely say the phrase of what they call it, but the idea was that you would spread the idea throughout the entire building, the entire company, if you were lucky enough. And if you won, you got to go overseas to the homeland, Japanese home plant. And so it was this big thing, right? And so and I wasn't even really the management level to be doing this yet. I was just doing it voluntarily because I could, and I was, trying to move up. I was a go-getter there. And so we got this, this project going, and we started like really working at it. We had like waited a little too long to get some stuff done. We kind of just, that was my fault. I didn't like see some problems coming. And so we ended up having to work pretty hard in the last couple of weeks before the project was over. And what we kind of started to notice was that like by day 3 of going like 12-hour days, like working, because we were working and then coming out of this and staying later to work on this project. And what I noticed is that like our productivity was just dipping and dipping and dipping and dipping because like we're just exhausted. We're exhausted. We're not in a good place. We're tired from work. We're not eating right because we're staying here late. So we're eating later than we are. So our blood sugar is low and our energy is low because we burned it all up on working. And our mental state, we're all, just drained because of stretching our minds. And what's important here to look at is that, things like your energy levels, your blood sugar, your sleep schedule, your emotional state and your mental state, these type of things control your state of mind. So would you agree, any of the listeners, and as I know Greg agrees, he doesn't have to answer, is that would you disagree that if you were in a bad emotional state, you were really frustrated, angry, and just upset, just mad, actually in your body, just pissed, would you say you would be more productive or at retaining information in that mood, or a happy, confident, energetic state? Would you disagree that you would be more productive in the energetic, happy, confident state than the negative, angry, frustrated state? I don't think you would. And it's because your body, you feel good. Your mind is focused. You're not pulled and being stressed and strained. Your body's not having to work hard. Like for instance, blood sugar. Like if your body's having to work harder because you don't have enough energy to just support your main functions, how are you expecting to like operate on a complex level, or how are you expecting your brain to be able to retain information when it doesn't even have like all the energy and food it needs? Like if you're not getting enough sleep and you're stressed and you're getting bags under your eyes and you're just like exhausted while you're doing this, your mind's not even fully awake. It's partly in a hypnotic state. It's actually called hypnosis. The hypnosis is when we wake up and we go to sleep. Your mind is literally not fully active when you're tired and exhausted like that. And it's this physiological state we don't give enough credence to, like feeding yourself the amount of calories and energy you need and staying hydrated and getting sleep. These sound silly, but I'm telling you, if you're a college student or you're an entrepreneur or you're somebody that's out there grinding and putting in long hours, I'm telling you, you're not monitoring this probably good enough. Because you're putting in these long hours and you're not worried about all this other ancillary stuff. Oh, food, I'll eat later. I got to get stuff done. I have food, whatever, doesn't matter. Oh, I got to be tight on money because I got to spend money on this. And I got this coming up. And you're very, there's a lack of responsibility that we can find, a looseness when it comes to taking care of ourselves physically. And sometimes that can greatly affect our brain's ability to retain information properly.
Yeah. And your brain uses like 20% of your body's energy. That's an insane amount of energy.
20%.
That's an insane amount of glucose. 20%. It's like 20%. 20. It's 20 or 21%. It's an
Is
absurd.
Is it the brain or the heart that puts off more electromagnetic?
The heart does, but the brain still uses more energy.
I can't say that word right now.
Electromagnetic waves.
There you go. This is why I got him.
Ciao. No, but really, your brain eats energy. It eats it. And so anytime you think that you're like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and study, and you haven't eaten in like 9 hours, it's not going to go well. You think it will go well. And even in the moment you think it's okay. Oh, this is all right, but it's not optimal, right? You wouldn't use your cell phone, right? If you're going on a trip, let's say what's your favorite state, right? If you're in the States or your favorite country. Let's say you were going to take a trip there on a plane, right? And it's, it's going to be a nice plane, first class, but if you were going there and you knew it was going to be a long flight, you're not going to take a phone with 6% battery on the red mark. You're just not going to do that. Why would you do that, right? It makes sense to charge it up. It makes sense to give it fuel. It makes sense to plug it up, right? So plug up your body. Like, why wouldn't you? It makes sense to plug it up. It makes sense to fuel yourself. So eating, sleeping right. These are all basic things. We're not even into the tools yet. These are basic things that are necessary.
Does your internet run faster, or does your computer run faster when it's full of battery or on 5%? Have you ever noticed the lag and the dim that comes on your computer or your phone when that happens? It's because it's struggling to even just do its base functions. It's like, forget all this internet and like communications and FaceTime and internet stuff. I gotta like
conserving energy.
Yeah. They go to the low power mode.
Turn off your light. Low power mode. It's like, so your body does the same thing. People just forget this because you're born into your body, so you kind of take it for granted. But you need to understand, if you wanna be really successful, right? And we'll get to the learning points. I know you're probably antsy, you're probably excited, but these are like the basic prerequisites that you need to understand to even get the max. Because if you're driving, right? If you're on a road trip, right, and you have a vehicle and you have the wrong type of fuel in it, I don't care what tips I tell you about where to drive on the road or what the speed limit is or what the fastest way to put in your GPS is. It doesn't matter. Your fuel's garbage. You're not going anywhere. So the number one thing you got to start with is your body. Now, let's say that you understand that, you understand sleeping, you understand drinking the right stuff and all that kind of stuff. We'll throw that out, right? Let's just say you get that. I want to talk about this idea, and it's one of my favorite ideas that I've come across, bar none. And it's this idea of maximum leverage. And what that means is there's in every system, right? And maybe we'll do a video about, thinking in systems and kind of dealing with systems, and everything's kind of a system if you break it down. Talk about that another day. But in every system of learning, of experience, whatever, there's a leverage point. Depending on what you want to do, there's a leverage point, right? So let's say in the example that I just gave, right? You're in a truck or a car or whatever, and you're going to your favorite town or you're driving. And, I'm talking about fuel and saying this is important, and you have the wrong kind of fuel, and, you can put in any kind of GPS. Well, let's say that I wanted to sabotage your vehicle. Okay. All I need to do is let your fuel leak out. That is a leverage point to that objective, right? It's just, I instead of having to do a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Instead of having to, show up at the car and say boo, or, call you or get the cops to come, I just do that. I just do that one thing, right? And maybe that's not even the fastest way, right? I could pop your tire and then you're not going anywhere, right? So with every objective, there is a leverage point that makes it faster and easier to bring that objective into reality, to bring that target to fruition, to get that thing done, right? So the idea is that you can use maximum leverage, right? You can find the leverage points in learning, in what you're learning. In every new thing that you're going to learn, there are certain things that if you find out what they are, right? They're commonalities, they're patterns. If you find out what they are, maybe you do, you'll notice all the rest of the learning is way, way faster.
Yeah. There's often a kind of a stigma with audiobooks. And I just want to like mention this real quick where, honestly, audiobooks is a great way to go through information quicker. They actually have there's an ability to cover information faster. I mean, if you look at the sheer amount of words that we say in these hour-long podcasts, we could fill an ebook, because the amount of words, the amount of ideas, the amount of information getting pushed to you at a time, you're going through it faster. And that doesn't necessarily speak for how much you retain, but if the need is to pick up information quick, audiobooks is a great way to to speed that up. You can multitask. You can have audiobooks playing while you're washing dishes. You can have audiobooks playing while you're cleaning your house in your headphones or driving to work. Like, you can be taking information in times that you normally are not, that you're not restricted to having to be somewhere that you can have to only focus on a book. You can keep that headphones in. You constantly playing this information and retaining information. That's one way that you can speed up the process, because you can fill in areas that you don't normally get to study with areas that you now get to study and take in information and be productive. YouTube and the internet is such a huge thing right now. People don't understand. I watch lectures at Stanford and Harvard all the time. So tell me, I mean, like, I won't have a degree at the end of it to show for the things that I'm taking. But if you want information and you want to learn something, the information is readily available from the experts. It's right there for free. You just have to be willing to sit there for hours. It's like you would if you were actually in a class trying to dedicate yourself to learning. Because that's the thing. When you're paying $200,000, $50,000, $300,000 for your college education, you're pretty dedicated to that learning. You know, you're pretty like, you're paying attention, you know, because you're like, I'm paying all this money. I'm getting the most out of these classes, you know? And so there's this tendency when you're not forced to do that, to not take it as seriously. But I had to tell my, I remember when I was going through my independent study, I had to, my parents didn't quite understand the level that I was talking about and the level that I was going at. Nobody really did yet. I was pretty fresh at the grind, you know, and I would tell them, you know, they'd ask me to do things for them, and I'd try to be helpful, where they'd ask me to, you know, go places, fun things, you know, events or whatever, like for the family, and I would have to turn them down. I would turn them down a couple of times, and finally, my mom asked me to do something. I said, Mom, like, look, you got to understand, I have a timeline. I have things I need to know. There's information I need, and I have to treat this with the same respect I would as a full-time class load. Because if I don't, it's going to take way, way too long for me to get this information, and the information I need to know now. So I have to push myself to find ways to fill my days with taking in information. So audiobooks is a great way to speed that process up. You know, and so it's, and also, you know, the internet, YouTube, these places have all these lectures, all these discussions, all these different school subjects that are all just out there trying to get the information out there, and it's readily available for you right there. The internet has solved one of the issues for you, and there's a
it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
I mean, it's like all free, dude. I remember when I was kind of getting started. I had this crappy kitchen, right? You know, I was making way less money. I was in a different place, right? It's just crappy kitchen, just crappy, right? You know, just crappy tiles, crappy everything, you know, right? Well, I used to be in there, and I used to wash dishes, and I would wash them by hand because, you know what? Didn't have a dishwasher. So you're sitting there, you're washing dishes. Well, you know what I did? I took my phone, and eventually I moved up and changed it and used my laptop. And you know what I'd do? I would sit it on the table. I would sit it on the dinner table. I would sit it on this, you know, wooden thing, and I would turn up the volume. I would press the little button. Didn't have speakers, anything like that. Just press the little button, turn it up, and I would just listen to YouTube. Period. Like just whatever was on, right? You know, just informational stuff, you know, documentaries, learning stuff, you know, success stuff, entrepreneurial stuff, people who are smarter than me. I would just listen to them, because what would happen for you if you were to start listening to, because this is a leverage point. I mean, if you really want to understand how to learn, why don't you just learn how to learn from the experts? Why don't you just look it up? Why don't you just pick up the tips? Why don't you just study the people who are doing what you want to learn how to do? Why don't you just study them? Why don't you just listen to them talk, right? These are things that you can do now with the internet for basically for free. Like there's no one stopping any of this.
Hey, who's the guy that has the flip in his hair, the glasses? He does YouTube.
Tai Lopez.
He has a phrase he says that I love, and I took to heart a long time ago, was find someone who knows what they're talking about and pay attention. Like find someone that knows what they're talking about and listen to them. Listen to what they're saying and do it. Apply it to your own life, because those people are the people that have the tips, the tricks, the things that you need, the way, the insight that in your specific niche that you need it. This isn't just about information. Everybody, you can find information about anything on the internet and 100 different blog sites giving you their opinion about things and trying to sell you a book. But to find the experts, to find the people that truly know what they're talking about and listen to the instruction they give you. Because honestly, sometimes you have all the information, you just actually haven't applied it to your life. And so make sure that the information you do have, you're actually making good practice of. You're not just like had some tips, you had some practices in place, but they're not working out. So I'm just going to go find some other practices because these aren't working. But really, you're just not giving them enough of the effort that they deserve, you know?
Yeah. You know, and maybe that space for you, right? Maybe, you know, going back, maybe the place you're learning from is here. Maybe it's this show, right? Maybe it's what you're looking for right now. But just understand that really, there's really not an excuse for not putting this into practice. And I kind of want to talk to the person now who, and I hope it's not you, right? Because you guys you're fairly consistent with being dedicated to, you know, what it is that you actually want to know. But there might be a person who's like kind of unsure about the value of tweaking your style of learning, right? Because that's a different thing, right? Everyone wants to learn how to learn better, but you might be unsure about, okay, like this seems like it's kind of it's not what I was thinking. It's not like, okay, leverage points, awesome, but like what's the practical tip? I don't want this abstract stuff, right? Like, well, just understand that if you don't start to learn concepts, right? If you don't start to learn the smart way, right, you're going to break your back, because, you know, it's like you're moving furniture, right? You know, you're picking up a couch, right? You don't have to do it with your arms. You don't have to, right? You know, there's a really fun thing that I actually used. It was I don't even know what they're called. There's these big orange straps, and you basically put them over your shoulder, and then like you hook them under furniture, right? And so someone else is holding them. It basically looks like you're wearing suspenders, right? And then on the bottom there's this it's basically like a bed made out of these two straps for like a couch or a, you know, bed frame or whatever you're moving, right? Like a lazy boy. And instead of leveraging the weight of your back, right, instead of like holding you down and making you do all this work, all that it's doing is it's putting the pressure, right? It's using the leverage that's created by your body naturally when you stand up, your shoulders, right? So you're having this stuff on your shoulders, and you know what it does? It saves you so much work, because you would think, well, that's not that big of a deal. I'll just move the couch. But what if you have to do that 10,000 times? And how many pieces of information do you have to learn? How many times do you have to relearn a new concept? How many times do you have to engage in new conversations and learn new stuff? Thousands and thousands of times. So think of it as an investment opportunity, because it is an opportunity. It's something that you're getting to learn, right? And we'll get to the tips. We'll get to the tricks, the techniques now. And I think Dan has a little bit more information about state than I do. And maybe that's a good place to start.
I think we covered physiology a little bit. I think an emotional state even. So like mental state, that's somewhere I could spend some time where and what that means really is where is your mind? You know, where's your mind wandering? What's pulling your attention? What's stopping you from focusing on what you need to be focusing on, you know, in the moment? Because what can happen, like we talked about how like you had a bad day and it's kind of making you in a bad mood and all these things. Well, one of the reasons that is so powerful and pulls your attention so strongly is because your mind is on it. Your mental capacity, your mental focus, your relative consciousness, your awareness is actually thinking about other things than what you're doing in front of you. And so what can happen is, you know, we try to like, oh, okay, I'm busy all day. Okay, I'll do this. Okay. And then I go here, and then I'm going to drive here, and then I'm going to pay this, and then I'm going to go here, and then I got to check my phone, and I got to do this. Okay. I'm studying, I'm reading, I'm focused. And it's like, you know, what'll happen is that you'll be sitting there trying to focus. And there's still these kind of loops running in your head. You know, there's still these things pulling your attention away, and they don't necessarily even have to be negative for it to be a problem. They could be great things. Like I have often found women are a very great distraction from what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, and so it's like that it's not a bad thing. I'm talking to somebody and you know, I got all my feelings and it's all cool, but I'm trying to focus and I'm trying to work and like I'm trying to do stuff, and my phone keeps vibrating. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can just, you know, like I can, and you know, because I want to, like, I'm distracted. My mind's looping. I'm sitting here trying to read this information. I'm thinking about her face and her eyes and her lips. And I'm like, this isn't helpful. Like, this isn't helpful. Like, this is great. But like, I need to be able to be here. I need to be able to be right here and only here. The only thing that needs to be going on in my mind is what I'm doing in front of me. And so that emotional, let's go back to that negative state I was talking about. If you're in a negative emotional state, chances are your mind is running over those loops of why you're in a bad state. And your mind is not here. It's off here. And this fucking day, I'm so mad. The fucking day was so terrible. I don't know if I'm allowed to say on YouTube, but I did. And you know, it's there, and it's all these loops, and it's worried about you saying the F word on YouTube instead of being here, right here, reading this.
Right.
You know, instead of doing this, I'm thinking about other things. I'm distracted by my phone and noises outside or someone at the door or what I'm going to do after this. And when if you allow yourself to be distracted by things, if I allowed myself to be pulled away from these things, you'd find my attention to be just and my ability to stay focused and my ability to stay on task of what we're talking about to be lessened. I wouldn't be able to do it as well because I'm being pulled from so many different things, you know, and so your mental state is actually a really important thing that you need to worry about is getting yourself to a kind of quiet place mentally. Kind of let yourself relax a little bit, take a breath, just quiet your mind, do nothing for 5 minutes, but just relax and just be there for a minute. No distractions, no phone, no computer, no TV, no music, no thoughts. Just be in that moment and just relax, kind of empty out and just shake off that day, shake off that thought, shake off that emotion, shake off as much as you can, let go of as much as you can, become as meditative as you can, so that when you go into reading and you go into studying, and you go in and taking information, your brain is at a calm and kind of quiet place, ready to receive thoughts. Because then what happens is you start taking in that information, those thought loops are now filled with things that you're supposed to be thinking about, not other things, because they're not filled up with, these spaces aren't filled up with other stuff. It's filled up with good information, what you're trying to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's any better way to say that, because you're, the way that your body is, right? Your level of relaxation, you know, whether you're chill or you're, you know, kind of strung up on, you know, high energy and thinking about other stuff. And if you kind of just relax a bit, right? And you kind of let your mind calm down, you'll notice it actually gives you more space to think about what you're doing and to focus on what you're doing in a more concrete and laser-like way, right? So I think that's a key for the setup, right? That's your base level stuff, right? If you don't understand how, one, to fuel yourself, you know, how to put the right stuff in, but also how to tweak your mind, how to tweak your body. None of the conceptual stuff, none of the techniques that are mental will really help you. They won't, because you can't use them. Because what would happen if I gave you this amazing 1, 2, 3 step, and or you know, Nan said 1 through 5 step, and you're listening and you're like, oh great, like all you do is these 5 things. Then you go to study and you sit down, you open the book, and you're thinking about going somewhere else. You're thinking about tomorrow I've got to do this. And so you're doing this for 5, 6 minutes, and you set a timer and you're like, okay, you know, I've got to do this, and you know, timer dings, and you realize you haven't actually absorbed any of that information because your mind wasn't there, because you weren't relaxed, because you weren't, you know, kind of freed up, right? So you should open that up, and you should maybe write that down in your little booklet if you have one. If you don't, you should probably get one, right? So the next thing that I kind of want to talk about, and this is probably the most useful in an isolated way. If you took this out of the show, out of the video, and you used it only for learning, right? Absent state, absent, you know, dealing with your own mind space and stuff like that, as just a technique on its own. If you use this and all the other stuff is checked off, and all the other stuff is good, and you're thinking about what it is that you need to learn, and you're focused and you're ready, what will happen is your ability to take new things apart, to learn new things, it's going to go up. It's going to go up quite a bit. And I'll tell you why in a second, because the way the mind processes information is, your brain is a pattern seeking machine. So let's say that there are 10 items that make up any given problem, right? Well, if you learn the 3 that are the most important, that make the most difference, right? If you learn what those are, let's take a bicycle, right? If you have a bicycle and you wanted to build one, right? Well, you can't really build the bicycle without any of the constituent parts, because then it's not a bicycle. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have the seat, it's not really a bicycle. It's a bicycle without a seat, whatever that would be, right? So the idea is everything put together. You need all of the parts, but some parts are kind of more directly necessary than others. Like, you can sit on a bike, but you can't really sit on it without a seat. And if you do, it's going to be very, very uncomfortable, right? You can move on a bike, but you can't really move on a bike without any wheels, right? So if you understand what it is you actually want to do, right? What it is you actually want to get out of what you're learning, Then you can say, okay, which part of this bike is the one that I need to focus on the most? Do I need to focus on the handles? Am I going somewhere? Do I need to focus on the seat? Do I need comfort? Do I need to focus on the wheels? Is the bike, is the path rough, right? Do I need to focus on the brakes? Do I need to stop? Well, you're noticing what it is you actually need to get out of what you're learning. So let's say that you're learning a new language, right? Or you're learning how to cook, right? Well, you need to identify what it is that you want to do with the thing that you're learning. And I'll tell you why that is, because this is important. And this is really important. So if you're doing something else, stop doing it and pay attention. If you do the wrong thing, meaning if you learn the wrong thing, you're going to mess up all the time that you spent. And what I mean by that is anything that you learn has an infinite amount of time that you can put in it. Let's say that you're a master chef, right? You're a master chef. You've been doing this for, a decade, 2 decades. Well, do you know all of it? Do you know how to cook every dish? Do you know every way to cook every dish? Do you know how to season everything? Do you know all the different kinds of seasonings that are from around the world? Or do you know different ways to mix exotic dishes with local dishes to make new dishes and dinners and foods and cooking stuff? You don't know all that information. You can't know all that information because your brain is not that big. You don't hold that much in your mind, right? You don't have that much time. So stepping back 2-3 steps, this is why you need to understand what you want to do with the information you're learning, because you can't actually learn everything of any particular field. But if you decide what it is that you want to learn or decide what it is that you want to do, right? Let's say that you're trying to run faster, right? Well, maybe you need to work on your stride. Maybe you just need to focus all of your effort on working on your stride. Maybe you need to twist your ankle in a certain way to get that extra inch, to get that extra, half second cut off. Well, that's good. Then okay, I'm trying to get a half second shaved off. Awesome. I'm just going to focus on this. So I'm giving you all these examples because I'm trying to make the point clearer. And the point is that all you need to do, the one thing you need to do is just find out what it is you want to do with the information you're learning, and then sort through what it is that would get you to that the fastest, right? Maybe you're trying to learn a new language and maybe you need to learn the alphabet. Okay, that's it. And that's what most people would do, right? But it seems like, and it seems basic, it seems like it's fairly simple, it seems like it's something that you'd already know, but it's not just with that, it's with everything, anything that you want to learn, right? There's 1 or 2 things that will be used over and over and over again. And if you learn them, you pretty much know most of what's going to be done. It's just going to be done in different ways.
Yeah. And I'd say, I'd say that, I mean, it's really the something I wanted to say, I almost said at the beginning of this, and I resisted and waited till now, because unfortunately, the bearer of bad news being me at this point is that the best way to get better at taking in information is to keep on taking in information and to keep on pushing yourself to take in more information and more information and more information. And eventually your brain has a pretty good idea of, and that's why it's important to use these strategies and these tips, because your brain's going to build a pattern of taking in information. It's going to build in a way of like, okay, every time we do learning and we take in information, we kind of do this, and this is this, and we're like this, and this is where our state's at, and we don't worry. Well, what you can do is you add these tips, you add these good you add these good avenues of finding information. You basically implementing in that a process in your mind that your mind's going to pick up. And so you now have good processes, good conditioning, good responses to studying, because this is the way you've normally done it. You've done it. You ever heard the phrase, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect play? Or it's practice. Because, people say practice makes perfect, but I think that's just wrong. Because I could practice shooting a gun under my leg for a really long time.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's the perfect way to shoot a gun. Like, but if I practice in the perfect way, then I can have perfect play because I've actually executed in the best way possible. So it's like you don't just need to practice information and taking in information. You need to practice taking in information and continuously taking in information like this, so that you're doing perfect practice for perfect play, or else you're just getting mediocre play.
Man, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Honestly, I don't know if you want to slap up a summary. I've been thinking about this for a while. I've been thinking about this particular idea for a while because I think that people really underrate how useful it is to know how to learn. And maybe we'll do more videos in the future that'll be more detailed, more information, less information. It depends, but it's one of those things that if you don't get it, right, if you don't understand how to make yourself learn more faster, what's going to happen for you is you're going to get left behind. And I mean that in the most real sense possible, because we're in an age now where everything is fast, right? Everything is quick, everything is instant. And if you're not able to keep up, right? Think about your job. Think about whatever the job that you have right now is. 100 years ago, right? You know, people are planting potatoes or carrots or, you know, doing gardening or whatever, right? And there's a singular skill. It's all you really need is that one skill, right? You just need to know how to work the field. That's all you got to do, right? That's really all you got to do. But how many different skills are involved in the job that you're in now, right? You know, maybe you work with computers. Well, do you know how to take apart the computer? Do you know how to, if there's a problem with it, plug it back in, you know, find the right chords? Do you know how to, you know, document the right things? Do you know how to send them to the right person? And maybe it's nothing to do with, you know, electronics at all. Maybe it's outdoors. Well, do you know all the different parts of your job? Because that's the thing about work now. That's the thing about, you know, employment now. It's the thing about school now, is you need more than just 2 or 3 skills. You need social skills. You know, you need logic. You need all these different things that are only vaguely related. Well, how are you going to get all those skills? How are you going to get them? You have to learn. You have to consistently practice. You have to take in more information. And if you don't, when I say you'll be left behind, I mean other people will be doing the things that you want to do, the things that you need to do, the things that you deserve. They'll have the things that you deserve. And all it would have taken is for you to decide, yeah, I do need to learn how to learn better.
Yeah, and I think that's really it. I mean, it's a decision at this point, because there's enough information that we've given you, let alone the information that's out there to learn how to learn better. And so you know, choose and join us in the league of people striving to make their lives better, or join the rest of the mass, because we're aiming for the 5%.
All right, guys, we're gonna kick it off here, and hopefully you stick around. And if you're a repeat viewer, then, you know, welcome back, and, you know, we'll see you soon, hopefully next time. See you later, guys.